The DOJ is making a concerted effort to look back at that 2020 election and find some fraud. Now, here in Arizona, that election has already been audited, canvassed, and studied and by Republicans and Democrats, and nobody found really any evidence of wrongdoing. So today, Arizona's Attorney General Chris Mays issued a statement in reaction to this latest action by the FBI, saying what the Trump administration appears to be pursuing now is not a legitimate law enforcement inquiry. It is the weaponization of federal law enforcement in service of crackpots and lies. Now, that Arizona Senate audit incidentally found and concluded that Joe Biden won the election here in 2020 by more votes than the initial original tally. Nicole, Jared, back to you guys.
Morgan, we reported just the other day how the county recorder, Justin Heap, made this claim that there were at least 60 illegal immigrants who had voted in previous elections. Do you think that there's any correlation between this event today and his claim that so far we haven't seen proof of?
Yeah, it's tough to put both of those together, but a lot of national outlets have been reporting that the Trump administration wants to nationalize parts of the election. He's said so himself. And the three states that are normally mentioned in that are very important states for the Republican Party: Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. Now we know two of those states have seen these FBI subpoenas and FBI search warrants carried out. What they actually do with this information, we just don't know at this point.
First Georgia, now Arizona. Trump's FBI is seizing ballots and digital data information about the 2020 election in these months leading up to the midterms. My name is Dina Doll, and this is the MeidasTouch Network. Let's get into this. As we know, not that long ago, Trump's FBI issued a judicial warrant and seized Fulton County ballots from the 2020 election. Now the FBI issued a grand jury subpoena to the president of the state Senate in Arizona and was handed over by that president to the FBI digital data information that was collected by a third-party private audit of the 2020 election. Different methods used by the FBI in both cases, evidently looking at the 2020 election, still being sorted out exactly what the FBI plans on doing to that, alarming voters because of the lead up to the midterms, as well as hearing Trump and Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and others talking about how only the right people will be voting. Well, this is the story of what's happened in Arizona. They used a slightly different technique here. What was used in Georgia was an actual warrant where they have to prove there is a probable cause of a crime and say what that crime is. Here they used a grand jury subpoena, which just means that the information they want needed to be relevant to their investigation. Now, Arizona officials had already told county electors and officials across the state to not comply with subpoenas because they were worried about the DOJ using subpoenas as an end around to the federal courts. As we know, in a completely separate thing, Trump's DOJ is trying to collect private voter information data from several blue states and swing states across the country. So far, federal courts have stopped all of that. The states have said you can have access to our public voter information that is often posted online, but private information we will not hand over, and the courts have backed them up. So Arizona officials were worried about the use of subpoenas and we're asking county officials to not comply with them. The Republican president, however, did comply and handed over the information. Because when you are issued a subpoena, you can go to court and ask it to be quashed. You can argue that it is not a valid subpoena, that there is not relevant or the investigation isn't relevant, instead of just complying. Of course, this Republican here, though, just complied. And what they handed over was not the actual ballots from the 2020 election, because those do not exist. Under Arizona law, ballots have to be destroyed 10 years after the election. So the ballots from 2020 have been destroyed. Instead, what they were asked to hand over and what they did hand over was digital data that had to do with that very strange cyber ninja audit in 2021. If you remember, there was this conspiracy theory about the fact whether or not there were bamboo fibers in the paper ballots, whether or not there was actually like pre-filled out ballots that came from China and were apart from the paper ballots. So this company called Cyber Ninjas, that was their actual name, was retained by the Republicans in Arizona to do their own audit. Now, this is after the regular government audits were done in Arizona. Then they had this third-party private auditor, which had so many problems. They had to go to the court so many times around it. The evidence that they collected would not even be able to hand up in court. Essentially, the information handed over, if Trump's DOJ was trying to use this in court, would be so bad because of their procedures. They had to go to the court. Kristen Mays, who now is the governor, was Secretary of State at the time, had to go to the court, had to demand accountability, transparency, and they won again and again. Magnesium is something most of us lack, and if you're taking the drugstore type, you're still not getting the full picture. Almost every supplement uses one form of magnesium, but magnesium comes in many forms, and each form helps your health in a different way. That's exactly why you need to try Qualia Magnesium Plus. Now, most people know that magnesium is critical for sleep, but some forms help muscle recovery, brain function, heart health, bone health, mood, and over 300 functions in the body. That's why Qualia Magnesium Plus is the only product to combine 10 bioavailable forms of magnesium with more than 70 trace minerals that help fuel magnesium support. It's full spectrum magnesium to deliver magnesium's full potential. Full body benefits include sleeping deeper, thinking sharper, recovering faster, supporting muscle strength, steadier mood and stress response, better energy metabolism. It's not just a sleep supplement. It's a full body magnesium system. Qualia Magnesium Plus has helped me, and I know it will do wonders for you. Experience the most trusted magnesium for purity, potency, and performance. Plus, it's non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free, making it a choice you can feel good about. Go to qualialife.com/mistrial for 50% off. And here's a bonus. Use the code mistrial for an additional 15% off your order. That's QUALIA life.com/mistrial and use code mistrial. Thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode. Here's just one example of the bad procedures that this Cyber Ninja company had. They said that there was 75,000 mail-in ballots counted that were not mailed out, and they saw this as some huge error. Well, it turns out those ballots were handed to people in early voting. They made those kind of glaring mistakes like that. But with the Secretary of State going into the courts, and the so many litigation they had to do around this audit, that audit, even with all their holes, still did not find any fraud. In fact, I think they found something like a few hundred extra votes for Biden. This third party Cyber Ninja, who had to basically be taught by the courts how to properly run an audit, still found zero fraud. Of course, wasted a lot of money in the process doing this audit, and they found zero fraud. It is the data from this audit that the FBI just obtained, really raising the alarm bells about what on earth they can find in this because of how unqualified this firm was. They even sent data at one point to some cabin in Montana. It was a mess. So one, what kind of information is there? Is this going to somehow be used in a way by Trump to, come up with some sort of justification? Or is there also private information that was just handed over in a runaround from the DOJ being blocked from being given private information? this digital data. In yet another example of our voting rights under attack, thankfully, we have the governor in Arizona, a Democrat. The Democrats there are going to sue, trying to get some sort of confirmation about whether or not there was private information that was handed over to the FBI and how it will or will not be used. If you haven't yet subscribed to the MeidasTouch podcast, be sure to do that. There's so many breaking news and really important stories about our voting rights. And if you haven't found the Mistrial podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to do that. Be sure to check out the Mistrial sponsors in the description below. So grateful for the Mistrial sponsors who do not censor what I have to say in this very important moment for our democracy.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.